Hey folks, it's Mangrel. Welcome back to the channel. I'm checking out the first frame from Quadmula to officially support the O4 Pro air unit. And this frame was built from the ground up around the specifications of the O4 Pro. Just look at how much space and clearance we have around that massive camera of the O4 Pro. You guessed it, this is the newly released Djinn F25 SP. Do bear in mind that the SP is a complete redesign from the prior generation. So don't try to purchase one-off parts. You will require the entire kit. And the Djinn F25 is really meant to be a cross between a freestyle quad and a cinematic quad that gives you no props in view. I did review the prior generation of this frame, and I thought it was an almost perfect build. But of course, with the release of the O4, we expect some more. Just like all the other Quadmula frames, this one is no exception. It also comes in this tennis ball style container. Once again, we have some really nice packaging. And inside we have a whole bunch of parts. We have the bottom deck, and then we have the top deck. And the top deck has a huge opening for the O4 Pro camera. We've got some beautiful arms. We've got the lock plate for the arms. This is different than the plate used by the other Quadmula frames. We have a plate that reinforces the top deck, given that big opening for the O4 Pro camera. We have a whole bunch of screws, all nicely labeled. Antenna holder for the O4 Pro air unit. I really like the print quality from Quadmula. The newly designed camera mount for the O4 Pro camera. We've got our standoffs. These are not knurled, so they won't hold the 3D prints as nicely, but they are beautiful. Next, we have a capacitor and a 3D mount for the capacitor. This thing is quite small, 35 volts, 270 microfarad. Here's the assembled frame. The carbon quality and the fit and finish from Quadmula is always top notch, and this frame is no exception. The camera mount for the O4 Pro is quite unique. We can see that these little nubs here don't actually go into the top deck. They kind of rest in between these two layers of the top deck, and they are also supported by the standoff back here. Doing a weight check, the frame with TPU weighs 60 grams, a little tiny bit on the heavy side. For this new build, I'll move over all the parts from my Siren F3 split. That includes the 3-in-1 AIO. This is from Happymodel. It's the Super F405. And then motor-wise, I'm moving over my RCINPower 1404 3850 kV motors. I've got reviews on each of these parts in the video description. The props I'll be using are from HQ Prop. They are the 2.5 by 2.5 by 3. I've got all the parts installed in the new F25 SP, and this thing was quite easy to work on. There's plenty of space to navigate and install your parts. So let me walk you through what I've done. I'll start from the back forward. I did put in my Express LRS antenna mount. This is the same mount that I used on the Siren F3 split. So it looks like we do have the same spacing at the back as the F3. And the Quadmula will eventually make all their 3D print files available, but they haven't as of filming, so you can use your F3 print files. For the antenna, I went with the O3 antenna along with the mount from my F3. Yes, I'm giving up a little bit of range, but that little bit of range won't impact my kind of flying. I've got the O4 Pro installed where it's supposed to be installed. I did use my custom-made TPU spacer, and the intent here is to give the O4 Pro a little bit of cushion in crashes just to increase the longevity. I did use the O4 Lite connector cable because it is shorter and it's actually the perfect length for this build. You can use the normal one, but this will lead to a cleaner build. The AIO is installed just like how I installed it in the review video. I've got my adapter plate down there, so that fits in just fine. I know the motor cables are a little bit too long, but these motors are from my 3-inch build, so I'll clean that up a little bit later on. And then the camera installs in beautifully, no issues, no modifications required. And we have adjustability for how far the camera moves forward and backwards. And of course, we've got adjustability for the tilt as well. So we can fine tune that to give us the exact level of view and protection that we want. Now, one issue here, and this is not an issue with Quadmula, this is a DJI issue, is that this screw hole is so low that you can't really reach in there given the motors. The motors actually block this screw. So you actually have to go and find an Allen key to go ahead and loosen and tighten the bottom screw. You also need to use a low profile USB cable for the O4 Air unit. Just the way that the arm and the motor aligns with the O4 Air unit, the USB cable will interfere with the motors. So make sure you have something that is either 90 degrees or low profile. We're fully assembled, and Quadmula went a little bit extreme with the clearance of the O4 Pro camera. Just look at how much space we have there. So I guess they're thinking about the future and making sure when we have an O5 Pro that we've got plenty of space there to continue using this frame. But this looks quite good, and I do like the little bumper here to protect that expensive large camera. Quadmula really needs to include two different sizes of battery straps. This battery strap is just way too long for a quad of this size. I had the same problem with the F25 of the prior generation, the F3 and the F35. These are just way too large for the kind of batteries that most likely will be running on these quads. Quad ready to go without the battery weighs 156. Add in our 4-cell 650 milliamp battery. We now have a ready to go weight of 226. That's pretty good. Now let's compare that weight to the weight of this. This is my Siren F3 3-inch quad. It has exact same parts with the O4 Pro air unit. This thing weighs 156. The final step is doing our beta flight configuration and doing our PID tune using my go-to software, which is PID Toolbox. I will give you my beta flight configuration file along with my PID tune in the video description. Right now you're looking at the video footage either directly off of the DJI O4 Air Unit Pro's onboard recording or directly off of the Goggles 3 DVR recording. I don't use any software stabilization or hardware stabilization in my flight footage. This way you can really gauge what exactly the quad is doing as it flies around. So if there were any kind of weird flight characteristics, shakes, jitters, prop wash, any of those things, they would come through on the flight footage you're seeing. And this is really the only way to gauge for yourself how well this quad is or perhaps is not flying. Even though we're in the middle of winter here in Canada, I did find that the Djinn F25 SP flew quite smoothly and quite familiarly. Really, it flew no different than the prior generation Djinn F25, which makes sense. All the modifications that were made here are specifically to adapt the frame for the O4 air unit. So a lot of the familiar flight characteristics, a lot of the benefits of the prior frame is still here on the new SP. The Djinn F25 really tried to balance out two different types of flight styles. It tried to cater to those looking for freestyle flight along with those looking for cinematic flight. And when they try to cater to two different types of flight styles, unfortunately, there's always some sort of compromise. And in this case, the compromise has to do with the power to weight ratio, especially given the smaller size and also the smaller props that we are spinning on this build. And you probably noticed that on my actual build section of this video, the 2.5-inch Djinn F25 weighs identical to my larger Siren F3 3-inch quad. And because of that, the F25 actually pulls more amps as you're flying around. It also requires more throttle to punch out of maneuvers, and even just hovering around and cruising around requires a little bit more throttle as well. All of that results in a little bit less flight performance, a little bit less flight time, along with just overall a noisier flight. However, what you do gain though is the ability of having no props in view, along with a quad that is quite maneuverable given the smaller size. I was quite impressed by the actual flight times of this particular build, especially given the cold winter weather. Now, doing a mixture of cruising and freestyle flight, I was able to get roughly 4 minutes and 40 seconds of flight time. Again, that's pretty good given the colder weather. Now, what's really impressive though is when you are doing some very slow cruise type of flight, I was able to get a little bit over 7 minutes. Now that's again incredible for the super cold weather we have right now. For those of you flying in 4:3 aspect ratio, I did also do a quick flight at 4:3 just to make sure that there are no props in view, and also to give you a flavor of how things look like on the O4 Pro Air unit when you're flying in 4:3. No surprise, we don't see any props in view on either the Goggles recording or the O4 Air Unit Pro's onboard recording. Finally, I did do a test on the ultra-wide FOV setting, and look at that, no props in view on either the Goggles recording or the O4 Pro Air Unit onboard recording, so exactly as advertised. It's no surprise that I'm in love with Quadmula frames, and really this Djinn F25 SP is no exception. Quadmula has done an amazing job of adapting the frame here to support the O4 Pro, along with that massive image sensor at the front. And they've done so in a very creative manner that does not add in too much additional weight. My challenge with this frame has always been the fact that it tries to prioritize both freestyle flight along with cinematic flight. And when you try to prioritize two different things, it always leads to some sort of compromise. So if you are looking for a frame that supports both of those types of styles, this is a great option. However, if you are only a freestyle pilot, I still prefer the larger brother of this, which is the Siren F3 split. The larger frame, the larger prop just leads to better flight performance, better flight times, and it actually ends up weighing exactly the same as this build over here. So hopefully you like this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for more videos.